Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Ennis versus Chukhadzhian rematch. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like it if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Ennis is 32-0 with 29 KOs, and Chukhadzhian is 24-2 with 13 KOs. This fight is for the IBF World Welterweight title. Ennis's last fight was a win via stoppage in round 5 versus Avanesian, and Chukhadzhian's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Scarf. This is in Ennis's home country of America. Their first fight ended with a Ennis unanimous decision win back in 2023. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I mentioned, IBF title on the line. It's Ennis in a fight in which perhaps isn't what people were wanting, isn't really what people were hyped up for. It's not the big names in which he's been linked around with. It's just another fight against a guy who, he's already fought once. He beat convincingly when he did fight him, but of course he didn't stop him. So perhaps that's a motive, a reason to have the rematch. I mean, he has rebuilt himself well and is coming off a clear unanimous decision to Scarf, in which was a good performance for him, and I suppose a bit of a surprising matchup in general, both of them against each other, but it was like I say, a clear victory where you're kind of showing the levels between like an English British level fighter to like a European slash world, like fringe world level type fighter, and Scarf had to deal with that, and of course he couldn't, with Chukhadzhian of course coming through with the win. But like I say, this fight is still not really what people are wanting. Ennis is kind of one of the biggest stars that isn't involved in Riyadh season at the moment. I mean, when you kind of look at the other pound for pound stars around, I mean, you've just recently had Inoue be announced as he's now got a partnership working with Riyadh season. Then also the likes of course, Crawford and Usyk, Fury. Canelo isn't, but Bivol, Beterbiev, all these other big names which haven't been involved in Riyadh season. Ennis is yet to get involved, but like I say, probably will in the not too distant future, of course, if he can get through Chukhadzhian in this fight. So, coming into this, he might be overlooking Chukhadzhian. He definitely could be, and to be honest, it wouldn't be surprised me if he does. I mean, he's, come to Matchroom and perhaps not hit the ground running quite as much as what he's wanted to. He was obviously meant to fight Crowley instead of Avanesian in that last fight, but obviously Crowley pulled out, and then we didn't even see it get talked about for this fight, Crowley as an opponent, and perhaps that would have been a fight in which would have sold a bit better, because of course it's a new name, a different name in which Ennis hasn't fought, and I believe Crowley's unbeaten as well. So, like I say, that could have sold a bit better, but nonetheless we have another homecoming fight for Ennis, where it seems like Matchroom are keen to bring homecoming fights. I think every promoter is keen to bring homecoming fights for their fighters, because obviously that's where it's going to sell the best, in their hometown, in their home state, where of course that's where the fans are going to be able to get behind their fighters a bit more, and perhaps they feel a bit of relatedness because they're from the same place, the fighters representing them to an extent. So, they're going to get behind their fighters. So I suppose it makes sense for these lesser fights for Ennis to be in Ennis's homecoming, because, like I said, that's where they're going to sell the best, no matter who's it against, what name it's against, and everything like that, if that makes sense. So, also Chukhadzhian wasn't really meant to be in this fight because it was meant to be Norman Jr. They seem to put a lot of money into wanting Norman Jr. and trying to get Norman Jr. to take this fight, but it was weird. He just seemed to completely price himself out. Obviously, he's a new champion, so perhaps he doesn't really fully understand what his worth is yet. I don't necessarily know if Matchroom were underballing him and giving him less money than what he actually deserved. So, it was weird to see Norman Jr. just completely not really too interested in actually taking the fight. Obviously, maybe he wants an easier fight. I mean, he was meant to fight on the Davis undercard, which was meant to be this weekend as well, but then I believe he got an injury, so he had to pull out. So, it's weird how he kind of chose a Davis undercard instead of a main event against Jaron Ennis, which would have been a much tougher fight, but he would have got paid, you'd think, a lot better. And I don't know if he's waiting for a Riyadh season opportunity. It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of fighters are realistically waiting for a Riyadh season opportunity with the way that things are going at the moment. So perhaps that's what's happened, and perhaps that's what he's waiting to do. And in general, this is Matchroom realistically throwing some of their biggest and best names onto a card, into a card, and they're not huge kind of 50-50 type matchups, but realistically they're probably as big a matchups you can get without Riyadh season being fully involved or anything like that. So I mean, of course, Ennis, I'm going to speak about all the other fighters, like the Rodriguez fight, which is you know also a huge fight and could have been a main event in itself, and it is nice to see them both on a card together. That's kind of an elevating together type thing where Matchroom are really trying to push a card and trying to make an entertaining big card, like I say, that isn't involved with Riyadh season. And then also uh, Ford as well. He's on it. That's gonna be a good fight. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But the likes of Coe as well, Mercado, Williams, some other big names as well being involved in it. Big kind of Matchroom talent, but Matchroom's success currently hasn't been anything that impressive at all. I don't really think it's been good, and I think they are really needing these names to step up and put on big performances. And I mean, the likes of Ford and Williams have been tested at that high level and have come up short. And so, for both of them, it's also going to be a real kind of test to push them and to really try and get that Matchroom success back going again. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see if they're able to do that. And also on this card, like I mentioned, um, fights on it. It's a great card. I'm going to speak about two other ones on it. Rodriguez versus Guevara for the WBC World Super Flyweight title. I think that Rodriguez is going to win via KO in round 5. He's on an amazing run at the moment. He is one of my favourite fighters to watch at the moment. Currently, he's pound for pound surely ranked, possibly even ranked higher than that of Ennis. I don't necessarily know. What he's achieved at only 24 years of age is incredible, really. And yeah, he's in against Guevara, who's coming off a very good win, realistically, for himself against Maloney, in which was a surprising win, a win in which a lot of people thought the judges wouldn't give it to him because of it being in Maloney's home country and everything like that, and it was a close fight. But even though the scorecards were close, Guevara deserved the win. It was an impressive performance from himself, but nonetheless, I still think Rodriguez is going to be able to relatively brutally destroy Guevara. I think Guevara got into exchanges way too much with Maloney, where I think if he gets into them type of exchanges, I think Rodriguez is going to really show his level and really show his talent and be able to pretty much do whatever he wants with Guevara with the angles in which he works being so excellent. Obviously himself, he got dropped versus Estrada in that last fight, but he did what all best fighters do when they do get dropped, is which they come back stronger and they make some adjustments, they come back stronger. And realistically, in the same round, Rodriguez still looked very impressive and was able to still have a lot of success in the round. It didn't really look like the knockdown affected him. It was a bit of, I suppose, a flash knockdown and really didn't affect him. And yeah, he really regrouped and was able to come back. And I suppose that's a showing of age to be able to do that at this point in his career. He's just kind of defying all expectations already, and it is just super impressive. And like I say, I think he's going to be able to get another destructive KO victory. Then also on this card, Ford versus Gonzalez. I think, well, it's for the WBA Continental North American Super Featherweight title, and it's Ford moving up into the featherweight division. And I think that Ford's going to win via split decision. I think it's going to be a very close fight. Gonzalez isn't a bad fighter at all. He's willing to give his all and really will push the tempo and will put Ford onto the back foot. And I think it's going to be intriguing to see how he deals with that, because it's been multiple fights in a row. I mean, coming off the Nick Ball fight, which was an excellent fight for him, but he was on the back foot a lot of the time. And in the early rounds, he was covering up quite a lot and just was losing them early rounds because he was just covering up. And then I do think he improved later on and grew into the fight later on and had a little bit of success with his power. But I don't think he can afford to lose quite as many rounds in the early rounds against Rebecca Gonzalez, because Gonzalez isn't as compact as Ball, isn't as hard to hit as Ball, but will keep coming forwards and applying pressure and has fought at a high level. And I think, like I said, it's going to be a close fight. I think Ford's just going to nick it with the power in which he has being superior, and I think he could perhaps stun Gonzalez or drop him at one point, and I think that's going to save him in a round. And yeah, I think, like I say, a close fight, but I think Ford's going to win, and that's going to perhaps propel him a little bit further along. I don't think it's going to really push him back into world contention afterwards, but I just always thought that Ford doesn't fight to his best abilities, doesn't fight to his best attributes. I think he could be a much better boxer and mover, but always gets dragged into fights, always gets dragged into wars, and I don't know. It's just if he keeps doing that, I just don't necessarily know if he's able to get back to a world level, and a world level in the super featherweight division, in which is a tough level to be at. And so, we'll have to wait and see. He has to get through this Gonzalez test at first. And going back to the main event, of course, Ennis as a fighter, of course, he's clean. Everything he does typically is sharp, crisp, clean, accurate, powerful. He has, of course, that power in there which he can break you down. He can have that one punch knockout power to an extent. It's not a crazy level of power where it's unmatched, but he definitely does utilize the power, and with the timing and accuracy in which he has and the hand speed, it's difficult to be able to match it, and only some of the best pound for pound are able to have them impressive attributes. He creates angles excellently, similar to that of, I suppose, Rodriguez, but he doesn't, I suppose, pivot around you as like a Rodriguez. He is able to open the angles, just utilizing his full body range of movements, and in general, just have such a good output. And when he does pair up his work, distribute his combinations, they're just excellent to see. He's got a high IQ, typically that's seemingly improving, and yeah, in general, he has a high IQ. He breaks you down a lot of the time. I think he's got an excellent jab when, of course, he remembers to use it. He moves well, and in general, moves well when he's relaxed. And a lot of the time he's controlled, he's relaxed. So he is moving well and picking his shots very nicely. A lot of the time it looks very, like I say, crisp, clean. He, like I say, pairing up his shots, but being able to pair it up with 3, 4 punch of just the same punch over and over again, and being able to really kind of pair up his shots that way. And it's just something in which a lot of fighters can't have success with, and aren't even willing to try. And he's able to have so much success doing that. He can fight in close or at mid range. His reactions, they're so sharp, so clean. That's why he has such good success countering. He can fight on the front of the back foot. He capitalizes with his combinations. He can kind of wait and wait and wait, and then capitalize and let go of combinations, and then it's really damaging. He's, like I say, the more controlled fighter, I believe, out of the two. I don't really think he loads up on his work too much, and in general has a very good work rate. Negatives about him, I think he doesn't cut off the ring especially well. I think it's, in general, he's improving, but I think in that Chukhadzhian first fight, Chukhadzhian was moving around a lot, and he didn't seem to be able to cut off the ring very well at all and really match that. So I think that's something in which he definitely has to do in this fight. And remembering the jab, his jab is excellent, but sometimes he can just forget to use it, and that can also sometimes help cut off the ring when he does utilize his jab. Forcing the fight a bit, I think perhaps he was doing that, or headhunting in that first fight. I don't think that typically, or in recent performances, we've seen him headhunt at all. I think against Avanesian, he was able to go to the body and really break down Avanesian, but I think in that first fight versus Chukhadzhian, he does headhunt, he did headhunt, so if he is able to make them adjustments, perhaps he'll be able to have more success. I think he's growing in patience, but sometimes does forget patience, and I think he's becoming more confident, but in the past has been a little bit more nervous, perhaps has been trying to impress and really trying to make people go on his side, but now I think he's at a point where he's impressed so many people that he doesn't necessarily have to go into a fight thinking, oh, I have to impress so and so promoters, other fighters to give them opportunities. I think he definitely is going to get opportunities, and he doesn't need to impress anymore. So like I say, I think he's becoming more confident. He's got a low guard. He opens up. Sometimes when he's striking, you see him open up quite a bit. He walks onto shots sometimes, controlling the tempo. I don't think he controls the tempo as well as what he could do, and fighters will match his tempo or control a tempo themselves, and he will fight to whatever tempo they set. Avanesian was punching when he was punching throughout the whole fight, and that's where Avanesian had the majority of his success. Of course, he got stopped in round 5, but still was having elements of success at times. I think his physicality, trying to use his physicality, I think perhaps he can fight a little bit emotionally and trying to really utilise and show his physicality. And I think he was doing that versus Avanesian, but Avanesian was able to push him back because he was the stronger guy out of the two. I think he sometimes takes to give punches. That's how he got the knockdown versus Avanesian. Knowing when to kind of take a step back and reset isn't always something he does especially well. And fighting opponents like fights sometimes is what he's able to do. Able to do it well, but it's sometimes what he does. Chukhadzhian as a fighter though, I think he's definitely there and aiming to disrupt the flow of that of Ennis, and I think he's definitely able to do that. I think he's going to be throwing at different times, going to be trying to make it difficult for you. He's got a good chin, he can definitely take a shot. He moves well, like I say, was moving around the whole fight versus Ennis, and perhaps was being a bit predictable at times, but like I say, was moving very well and was continuously just difficult to pin down and is hard to hit because of it. He changes levels well. He can fight on the front or the back foot, and did have certain elements of success whenever he did get Ennis onto the ropes, even though they were just kind of for short periods. He can tire you out because of his movement so much. If you aren't cutting off the ring, he can tire you out. But like I say, Ennis didn't seem to tire out in their fight. But like I say, he can do that. He's willing to let his hands go as well. His stamina is good, and like I say, he's able to continuously move around at a high pace throughout the whole fight, which is not easy to do. It's definitely a difficult thing to do. I think he's definitely more of an in-close type fighter, and he definitely tries to respond whenever he does get hit with a big shot. Negatives about him, I think he doesn't necessarily make his opponents respect him. He definitely has the lesser power out of the two of them, and perhaps he would have been able to have more success with his power in that first fight, but because he has that lesser power, he just wasn't able to have the same level of success. I don't think he takes enough necessary risks. I think he's a bit too predictable and just, like I say, continuously defensively moving, not taking them necessary risks and staying too far out of range to realistically be able to do too much. I don't think his timing is excellent with his counters. I don't think he was having too much success countering Ennis, dealing with the speed of Ennis. He leaves his head open quite a lot when he's got good head movement, but when he is just kind of trying to push you around, push a shot around you and then move around with the shot, he leaves his head quite open doing that, and Ennis was continuously able to land overhands because he was doing that. He drops his guard, he leaves his jab out quite a bit, and that's where Ennis's hand speed again was being superior. He's got quite wide hooks. I think his accuracy in general is not amazing. I don't think his versatility whilst throwing combinations, his punch variation whilst throwing combinations is anything too impressive. I think he does smother it a bit, force it a bit, push punches onto you a little bit just with the straight shots, and doesn't really distribute his hooks that well. I don't think he makes necessary adjustments, like I say, and then he can also, like I say, be predictable when he is just continually circling it around. Ennis is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Ennis will win via unanimous decision. I think he's going to win again via unanimous decision. I'm giving Chukhadzhian enough credit to say that he won't be stopped and he will be able to perhaps continually move around again. I think Ennis is going to go to the body more. I think it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to cut off the ring well enough. But yeah, I just think Chukhadzhian is going to be tough, but Ennis is going to be very, very impressive again. And growing confidence, land more shots. I think Chukhadzhian is going to struggle to land on him again with the speed, and perhaps this fight will go out similarly to the first fight. But like I said, I don't think Ennis is going to force it quite as much. I think he's probably been told by his team there's no need to force the fight, and yeah, I think it probably will be a unanimous decision win again for him, even though perhaps he might be more fueled up than ever to go for a knockout because, of course, it being in his hometown. We'll have to wait and see. Then who he could go on to fight, I mean, of course, Crawford's a name which has always been involved and always been talked about for quite a while now, and Crawford's been seen as ducking him and things like that. I don't necessarily know if he can duck Ennis like that anymore because he is, of course, a champion, even though it is in the lower weight division, and I don't think Crawford has loads of options available to him. It seems like Fundora might fight Crawford next. If Fundora fights Spence, though, then Ennis versus Crawford is still a huge matchup, and I think that's the matchup His Excellency would love to make. Otherwise, Crowley could be an option. Of course, that was meant to happen the first time, but we'll have to wait and see. I think the welterweight division at the moment is weak. It's struggling for big names. I mean, it has Norman Jr., Barrios, Stanionis, and Ennis, and they're the champions. They're not huge champions. None of them are, bar Ennis is the biggest name, but Barrios has created a bit more of a stir about him. Of course, being WBC champion because he's talked about fighting Pacquiao and things like that. So he's got a little bit more of a name to him. But then Norman Jr., of course, like I say, he's a new champion. He picked it up beating Santillan, sorry, and so it wasn't really, a big name which he won it off that WBO title, and like I say, he seemingly is willing to fight on the undercard of Keyshawn Davis, so, and then also Stanionis is a great fighter, but I just don't think he's created a name for himself big enough fighting other big guys yet, so I think the welterweight division has gone from being very strong with the likes of Ortiz, Ennis, Crawford, Spence, until but they've all moved up now. And so, like I say, if Ennis is trying to move up, then it would make sense into the super welterweight division. I think Ennis is big for the welterweight division, but if he's trying to stick around in the welterweight division, there isn't really loads of big options available to him, and it seems like Norman Jr. fight might not even happen. So, like I say, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure if His Excellency gets involved and wants Ennis to fight another one of the champions, we'll have to wait and see. I think it'll also be interesting to see how keen Matchroom are to just let all their big fighters go to His Excellency in Riyadh season, but they might be, I don't necessarily know. But yeah, that is it for today's video though. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.